Hello gamers from around the world, this is Boxenberger, the video game enthusiast from Germany, and I would like to welcome you to today's episode of The World of Gaming, your number one podcast, where we discuss everything, and Dutch is representing it nicely today. Great shirt you got there, man.
Thank you. Presented by and given by Old Boxy here at Gamescom this year.
Yeah, we exchanged shirts there.
We did.
Guess also got one, but he never wears it, man.
I've seen him wear it once or twice. He wore it when he was out on the latch.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So welcome to everyone in the chat. I see already a lot of familiar names. Great to see you guys. And don't forget to vote for the Age of Empires 4 gameplay. Of course, you can vote for whatever you want, but I highly recommend Age 4. Got some good footage here showing how you play in the Diamond League. Dutch, I'm back. But yeah, man, how have you been?
I've been very good, actually. I got some good news today, and to be fair, it was delayed news because the original message I got was from the 24th of November, but I didn't see the email because it was sitting in my junk. But the second email come through that I did see, and I've been granted the opportunity to be a Wired Productions content creator going forwards. So I'll be part of their collective creators, which means I'm going to get access to developers that work on Wired Production games to be able to get interviews, get them onto the showcases and things like that we do, get game access early, get early info news on some of the awesome indie games that they're bringing out. So it's going to bring a lot to both the indie community and the indie showcase as well every year. So
which is big congratulations, awesome. Man! Big congratulations! That's so cool. Awesome. But yeah, we also have, again, a fantastic community here already in the chat, and a big welcome to everyone who listens to the show after the fact, either here on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you are listening. Welcome. Hope you all are doing well. The gaming year 2023 is slowly coming to an end. Slowly but surely. We just talked about it a little bit before the show. I really cannot wait for the Christmas break. Work has been killing me lately. So I honestly didn't have too much time to game this week.
Yeah.
But I did play a little bit of Final Fantasy 16. I think I'm at the final boss. I think that's the last battle. And since I barely had time, honestly, like this boss fight is already going on for more than an hour now.
Really?
Yeah. With multiple stages, and things
what's
happening.
His face? The big giant guy.
No, that's not the final.
No, but I'm just saying when he expanded, that boss battle lasted a while.
That lasted a while, and that's like only the like a third or so of what I've done in the final boss battle, and I had to take a break midway through, and I have not been able to get back to it just yet. But yeah, guys, let us know in the chat what you have been playing in Dutch. What kept you busy? You've been playing a lot more than I have.
Yeah. I've again refined my focus into a couple of games at the minute. So, like you, I'm focusing on Final Fantasy 16 and Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Played on the weekend with Fanto instead of because I was going to stream ESO, but I was just wiped out. So instead, we played some co-op on Avatar,
Nice.
And that is silky smooth. That Avatar in co-op in multiplayer. Had absolutely zero issues. There was no problems. There was next to zero lagging issues. Buttery smooth, really, really cool. And that game's just beautiful. Combat's really fun. When you add another person to it, it becomes even better because you've got support. One can be on these, one can be flying above, giving air support, whilst the other one's going in and being stealthy and trying to take out the targets and the bases and things like that. So It's super cool. And again, like you, Final Fantasy 16, and loving that. The boss battles are absolutely insane. Really cool story, and I'm looking forward to cracking on with that and jumping into the DLC that released as well.
Yeah.
I've downloaded a bunch of new things. I got a key from Wired for Tin Hearts on PS5. Obviously, it's on Game Pass at the minute as well, Tin Hearts. So if you can play that, do it. It was featured in our Community Indie Showcase as well back in April. Beautiful little game. So if you can download it and give it a chance, do that. We've also got a few more lined up for, like you say, like our little break that's coming up for Christmas. Yeah. There's so many little games that I'm gonna polish off. Little indie games. There's a few big games that I'm not playing on stream that I'm gonna jump into. So I can't wait. I can't wait to have a break and just be able to chill out and relax and recuperate.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And especially we will be doing a lot of traveling around Christmas. Visiting family. Yeah. My family, my wife's family, and then we are going off. We've booked a small cabin with the kids, close to a lake in the very south of Germany, and we are going there for 4 days over New Year's. And so I prepared myself and downloaded a bunch of games on my Ally. I've downloaded North of the Spirit of the North, Cocoon, and Chuzon, which are all great games that I have not been able to catch up on. So yeah, let's see what has our community been playing, man. We have our brother from the Netherlands, the pineapple-loving Vinny, plays God of War, Ragnarok, and FIFA.
I'm glad he's eventually getting into Ragnarok. I'm glad.
Yeah, finally.
I've been struggling with him for a long time.
Yeah, man.
To play that game.
Great game.
Yeah.
H. Julia plays Avatar, which I put actually a little bit on hold because I said, okay, I'm not the kind of guy who plays like multiple games in parallel. I play them once at a time, and I like to finish my games. So I decided finish Final Fantasy and then continue with Avatar. But I got some footage because I played like the first 4 or 5 hours, and I'm really enjoying what I've played so far. And so I thought, okay, I need to focus on that game and give it my full attention. And that's why I decided to finish Final Fantasy 16 first, which is awesome, by the way. And then UK Deseros has been playing WRC on Xbox, and he's trying out the Tekken 8 demo and says it's pretty good. Right. I'll get to the super chat from Jonas in a second. Hang on, what else? Luke Steele. Man, we need to get him back on the show, by the way.
Yes.
We have to.
in a non
yes.
A non-lawyer capacity. Just talk games.
Exactly. Just talk games. We are finally over this ABK acquisition and don't need the legal expertise, but we want to hear his thoughts on gaming. So I need to get in touch with him, man.
Plus, that guy's got a monster PC rig.
Yes.
So in terms of fidelity,
not jealous at all at the 4090, man. He has been playing Ragnarok, Valhalla, and Avatar.
I've been hearing really good things about Valhalla, like in terms of the story quality that it adds to the game as well. Apparently it's significant.
Yeah. I have downloaded it but have not started it. It's just
that's why I'm gonna play Ragnarok again on my break, because
you do the full playthrough again?
Yeah, with the PS5 version it completely wipes all the trophies because it's classed as a different version. Know.
Right, you played that still on the PS4.
Yeah,
I remember.
So now. I literally haven't even switched it on PlayStation 5. I've got the upgrade, so I'm gonna play through that again, and then Valhalla.
All right. So the General C. We've had a heated discussion about graphics earlier. Shout out to you, brother.
Yeah.
He has been playing Hunt Showdown. Of course. So good stuff there. I hope I didn't miss anyone. And last chance for you guys to vote in the chat what gameplay we are putting on here.
Vote Avatar. Vote Avatar.
No,
Avatar's
definitely Age, man. Age.
Avatar's winning.
General C in the
winning.
says vote for Age. I want to see Boxy own noobs. So I will be definitely. That's the spirit, man. That's the spirit. But first, I need to shout out to people. First is Fanto Sir, who became a channel member to support us here. Shout out to you, brother. Thank you so much for the support. And Jonas the Dad sends in a $2 super chat and says he's loving Starfield, but War Tales in Game Pass is fun. Yeah, I watched the trailer. I wasn't sure about it. I thought maybe I'd download it on the LA and take it on the go with me.
Is that a new edition? Did I miss that one? Because I didn't see it in the. Oh, there it is. There it is.
Yeah. It's I think last week or so, if I'm not
quite a big one as well, isn't it? Oh, it's an RTS. That's right up your street.
Mm-hmm. I know. It's
that one installed for your time off.
I'm always so tempted to uninstall H4, because it's such a massive time sink. But no.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we need to put you on a temporary age ban whilst you mop up a few games that you.
Yes.
Kind of.
You should do that. Should give you access, remote access, to be able to
access to put a temporary ban.
Temporary ban
for 1 month.
Man, I'm finally getting back into my groove, It took me a while after taking a 3-4 month break, and I lost some of my skills.
Has banned you for 1 month to catch up on your backlog.
Yeah, we should do that, man. All right, I'm closing the poll. The people have voted. They want to see Avatar first, so we will do that and then put on some H4 later. You're not getting out of here today without seeing H. All right. I actually have to really quickly change the gameplay. I thought people might vote for H, and so that was up there by default. But there we go.
I've got to give you a timeout. an age timeout.
Yeah, I know. All right. Good stuff here. Good stuff. But yeah, let us get into some actual topics. Man, I wanted to start with something that we didn't get last year from Xbox, but we did get it this year, and we also got it from PlayStation, and that is the yearly reviews. I would assume that almost everyone here in our community also has done them. You can go to xbox.com, or you can go to also PlayStation, and even Nintendo has one now, but it didn't work for me for some reason. But I did get my year in review on Xbox and PlayStation, and I wanted to talk to you guys, of course, in the community here, and Dutch to you, about some of your highlights. What was in your stats, and did something surprise you? What was your most played game on either of those consoles?
Yeah, so my most played this year on PlayStation 5, because I've only had mine since the tail end of September. So my PS5, it only brought over PS5 stats, not PS4. So my PS5 stats, Final Fantasy is my most played with over 40 hours so far. On Xbox, I do believe it was Hogwarts with 140 hours.
All right.
Then it was Starfield. Then it was Diablo. Those are my three most played. It was Starfield with 114 hours, and Diablo had 84. Surprising, that's quite a lot, actually. I didn't think I had that many hours in Diablo, but I obviously do.
It can go fast, man. It's a time sink. It's a time sink.
Significantly. Overall, 950 hours or so on Xbox.
Okay, good.
And 114 on PlayStation.
All right. So for me, on Xbox, it was Diablo was the most played game. Second was Starfield, and third was Hogwarts. And I think, at least, that they didn't count the PC hours. into that because, well, I played a lot of Starfield on my Alley and, of course, on PC. You know, I like those frames. And and the HDR really wasn't that great anyway in Starfield. So I played a lot on PC. And I would have to assume that if they would have counted those hours as well, it would have been Starfield. Of course, not including Steam, because then it would easily be H4 with my most played game. And on PlayStation, my most played game was actually Final Fantasy 16 already. Second place was Spider-Man. And the third one was the Horizon Forbidden West DLC. So, yeah.
Oh.
Good
I haven't
stuff
played
there.
that at all, actually. I didn't invest in the Horizon one because I just can't get away with Horizon Forbidden West or
really.
Zero.
I did enjoy that game, and I really enjoyed the DLC. The DLC actually surprised me. It had some amazing boss battles. And
I think for me with Horizon, the gameplay is great, but the story was so boring.
Okay.
I thought the characters, I just didn't get on with the characters. Like, the story slugged along. The gameplay is fantastic, but with a game like that, the story has to be engrossing. And to me, it just did not click with us. So I could not care less about what was going on in the world. I had fun with the moment-to-moment parts when you're fighting the big dinosaurs and things like that, but outside of that, it just didn't catch us.
Okay.
Which is a shame. It's a shame.
It's a shame. Because I think it is your type of game, knowing a little bit your gaming taste by now.
Yeah. Gameplay-wise, it is, yeah.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, and of course, Spider-Man also took up a lot of hours there, and then now I haven't even finished it yet. But Final Fantasy 16 is of course a massive game, and it's my most played game on PlayStation. But then again, I don't know really how good I can trust the Xbox review because again, I'm not sure if they counted the PC hours. Then I also played a little bit of Diablo 4 on PC as well, but they definitely didn't count those hours because they are on Battle.net, you know. So yeah, but it's always fun to look at those stats. So Pyromat in the chat says he has played 1,200 plus hours on Xbox this year.
Nice.
And about 1,000 of them via cloud. Nice. Luke has been around 140 hours on PlayStation and 290-ish on Xbox. Sweet.
Luke plays a lot of games on PC now.
Yeah.
It's a shame Steam don't have a wrap up. Nintendo's as well, by the way, but I haven't got my Nintendo one.
Yeah.
My Nintendo one's going to be like 12 hours.
It would be a little bit more. I did play actually quite a few games this year on
Kingdom. Was Pokemon?
No, that was last year, right? Pokemon was last.
I can't remember whether or not it was last or the beginning of this year.
I haven't played. I'm not a Pokemon guy, so I haven't played that. But I think Pokemon was last year. I played a lot of Metroid Prime this year.
Yeah.
The remaster, which was phenomenal. And then, of course, Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah. Played a lot of Mario Kart again.
Nice.
I actually did a playthrough of Link's Awakening again. You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I played on my Switch. Definitely not my most played console, but they were.
Yeah.
And Mario Wonders. Yeah, right. Also played that. So, yeah. Man, good stuff. Dustin Lambert has been playing 1,191 hours on Xbox this year. Good stuff here. Good stuff. But all right.
Daz has got 200 hours on Final Fantasy 16. Did you catch that?
Oh no, I'm sorry, I missed that. and 200 hours in Final Fantasy 16. I think he's playing like it for the fourth or fifth time now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, sweet. All right, Dutch. Let us move to some actual news of the week. Listen, one of the things that happened that wasn't probably too surprising, but still is kind of sad, is that E3 is no more. They've announced and confirmed that E3 won't return. They said the official organizers said, confirmed, we know it's difficult to say goodbye to such a beloved event, but it's the right thing to do. I mean, after COVID, they never truly recovered, and even before COVID, you could argue that their presence, their importance was already a little bit declining, with bigger publishers like Sony not appearing there anymore. However,
it was ultimately how much they were charging for people to be there.
Ridiculously high prices. However, it didn't really come as a surprise. During COVID, Jeff Keighley established his Summer Game Fest, which was then also strong competition there. Publishers really didn't feel the need to have the presence at E3, even though almost everyone had their showcases around the same time. Xbox did EA, Ubisoft, those showcases, but they didn't have the necessity to go under the E3 umbrella and just host their own event during that time frame. So it didn't come as a surprise, but it's still kind of sad to see, because I mean, E3 is or was the gamers' Christmas. I watched it every year. Never been there, obviously. Too far of a travel. Would be way too expensive to go there, fly there, hotel and everything. However, I remember that one E3, for instance, that was 2017. I had a 1-year-old. My wife was pregnant again with our second one, and he wasn't sleeping that night, for how like babies do. He was a 1-year-old, and my wife was super tired and exhausted from her pregnancy, and then I stayed up almost all night. He was sleeping on my chest. Yeah, and I was sitting on the couch with him, sleeping there, watching E3 all night, because those press conferences, they were back to back at that time. Xbox, and an hour later Ubisoft, and then an hour later Bethesda, and an hour later then Sony, and it went on till 5 a.m. in the morning German time, and I watched through the entire thing and things like that. We will never have that again, man, and it's kind of sad. Yeah. So yeah, what do you think? You're surprised E3 is no more? Is this a big deal for the gaming industry? I know.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we can understand why the developers pulled out of it, I think it's a massive deal for the gaming industry, really, that E3's no more, because it was the premier time of the year for everybody to get together, and all the developers have been saying it as well, like what it meant to them and what it meant to them to connect with their communities and other developers and other industry folk. And it's just, that's the difference as well, is that's the only time really that they got to get together, and probably why developers and studios get together for the Game Awards, because it's a time to connect with everybody else in the industry now. That E3 once provided. All of the devs used to go and watch like everyone's showcases and go and see each other and talk to each other, and all the studio heads met up and talked about games and what they're creating and showed each other off some stuff. And like you mentioned, it was literally back to back. It wasn't like we had to, right, Xbox's showcases this week and then PlayStation's is 2 weeks time, and then in between that we've got a couple of indie showcases, and in between that we've got like EA and then Ubisoft. Like, it was literally like Sony, then Xbox, and then Nintendo, and then the PC, then Bethesda, then it was just constant, like one after another. There'd be the next showcase, then the next showcase, then the next showcase, and it would go on for a week. You'd have like every day there'd be like 5 to 6 showcases back to back. And in between that, you had like this panel that would discuss what they just saw, and then they'd be like, right, okay, now we're tuning in. Like Sony showcase is just about to begin. Then they'd jump over there, and that one would start. And then they'd go back to the panel afterwards and be like, "Whoa, did you see X, Y, and Z?" And then they'd be like, "Right, okay, now we'll be right back." And just after this, it's a PC gamer show, and then the PC show would go on, and that would be on like late night. And it was awesome because it was like literally every day there was just so many things to talk about, and everything was in 1 week. Now it's spread out over months, and like there's no like dedicated forum for it anymore. And as much as we enjoy what Xbox do on their showcase, and they've been putting out some really great showcases recently, and Sony haven't appeared at all for 2 years in terms of an actual showcase. But we can never say that they didn't produce some of the best showcases that there have been, because we think back to the original God of War's unveiling, God of War 2018's unveiling. That showcase was an absolute like masterpiece, essentially.
Yeah.
The way they set that out, the way they had the orchestra like introducing the game before the game came on screen, everyone was like, "Holy shit, God of War's happening!" Like the rumor is eventually finally true, and then that went on screen, but it was like constant, like all of the time. And then like every time they unveiled something, even we joke about it, but even when they unveiled Ghost of Tsushima and they had Flute Man on there, like those things just aren't happening anymore, and that's a damn shame. Like they're not getting the fans to turn up to this, and this is the only thing that I would like Xbox to do for their next showcase, is have a bit of like do it more as a theater thing event again
with a live audience, because there's nothing that captures this energy when people are not standing in a studio pre-recorded. We have Phil and we have Sarah Bond coming on stage during these showcases, but it's different if they do it live. Remember when Keanu Reeves came out?
Yeah.
And you had the "you're breathtaking" moment and stuff like that.
Granted, they got Keanu Reeves for the Phantom Liberty announcement last time, but again, without an audience, like that would have been so much more hyped if there was like an audience there. Like you can do that production, and you can practice it multiple times yourselves, but you can bring that to a live audience, because ultimately they were on stage presenting the things anyway. Sarah Bond was still going on a stage. Phil was still going on a stage.
Yeah.
Todd Howard was still, like, all of the studio heads were going onto the stage, and then a few were pre-recorded, and that's fine. But you can all do that whilst you're on stage and to an audience. And that's one thing I want Xbox to do, is give people the opportunity, and they can do this anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
They don't have to have it at the theater. They can choose to do a different place every time and get a different audience in. Like, okay, this time we're doing it in Cologne, and we're going to do it at the Colmess and do our presentation there. And then in London, we'll do it at somewhere there. And then over in America, we'll do it here. Just change it every year. Just do your showcase. Still broadcast it the way you normally do, but get audiences involved again. Get these fan fest events involved again. And we want Sony, and I'm not saying just to show off their roadmap, but I want Sony to get back to putting effort into their showcase period and their unveilings, because the lack of effort is just apparent. It's just as if they're going, whatever, here's another game, just take it. We don't care. There was no enthusiasm behind it, and that's what's lacking. In E3 period, it was so enthusiastic. Everyone was hyped. There was like massive audiences and everyone interacting with each other, and
it's not just for the fans and the actual audience there. It's for the fans that watch around the world. There's just a different energy, and I think the importance of E3 was that this was because it was such a dense event where you had all announcements within 24 hours.
Yeah.
It was the one time of the year, where gaming was bigger or more important than just for the core audience. Because now if you have an Xbox showcase, if you have a PlayStation showcase, those cater to your core audience. They have a lot of viewers, undoubtedly. Yeah. but it's all just for the gamers that are already invested to a certain degree. The thing about E3 was that, the general press, the general media covered those events. You had reports in the media that usually don't report about video games. Yeah, they cover the daily news. The war in the Ukraine, or over there in Israel and Palestine, or whatever. Those kind of news websites, they covered suddenly gaming. Gaming had this one massive event where it just became something more than just for the fans. And that's why I think the industry kind of needs such an event. And it's sad to see that leave or not being there anymore. Because of this importance. And I wonder if there's some organization around the world that is just going to pick that, or tries to pick that up. We talked about this earlier this year when we were at Gamescom. Why are they not doing that anymore? Or not? Trying to be the next E3. Try to get those showcase events there. We don't need them in June anymore. The June date is very historic. Back in the days when E3 was not actually for media or influencers or whatnot, originally E3 has been a trading showcase. Publishers went there, and if you had a gaming outlet, you could go there, inform yourself, okay, what will be the games that I will have to put up in my store in the holiday season? And you had to have that time in between, because deals were made there. You had to organize all that. In this day and age, in 2023, 2024, next year, you don't need that anymore. You don't need like a 6-month lead time up to a launch in order to get marketing right. You don't need that. The hype anyway falls off way quicker than it used to. GTA 6 announcement, the hype already gone. 2 weeks after the trailer, bam, nobody cares anymore. So you don't need to have the big showcase in June. You can easily do that in August, because the games are not coming out anyway before September. That's when most of the games release. And even if you release a game now in June, July, or even August, you could easily announce that in something earlier. So why not, for instance, Gamescom? Let Gamescom pick that up. And if I were the organizer, I would definitely try to get to Xbox to do their event there, and then Ubisoft do their event there, and let Sony try to get Sony back, and do a showcase there. I don't know. Do you think anyone is going to try to fill that void that is now left by E3? Maybe Gamescom or someone else. It could be someone else,
It's literally just Jeff, I think. I don't think anyone's going to try and do a physical in-person event again. Not to that extent. I don't think so. You've still got PAX. You've still got Gamescom. They're both big physical in-person events. PAX East is the biggest one over in the US. And Gamescom is the biggest one in Europe, but also they're bringing Gamescom kind of worldwide. But the biggest version of Gamescom is in Cologne. So if you're wanting a big in-person event that is going to be as close as possible to an E3, it's Gamescom, and it will be going forward. It's only continued. Actually, Gamescom is only continuing to increase significantly since COVID. It's actually recovered very well, and judging by the crowds we saw, it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. That Gamescom is absolutely ginormous. So I think Gamescom is going to be the big. I think I would be surprised if some of the developers, Sony excluding, some of the developers don't use that as a moment to do a showcase at Gamescom as opposed to E3. That could make sense. I mean, even if you have a think of the stage that was available for the opening night live, that area in itself is big enough to do everyone's showcase. Like the show, just as a showcase period, and
easy.
And then outside of that, like opening night live, like the hall that we were in for that mini showcase there, like there was maybe 200 seats there, but it could have been, if you take out the middled part, that was like,
it was way more, dude. That was easily 2,000, 3,000.
No, it wasn't 2,000 people sitting down.
Absolutely.
Couldn't have been. Didn't look like it.
Didn't look like it.
Either way,
easily.
Either way, they had that partitioned bit in the middle with the camera and the studio guys in, and then behind that there was still like a good couple of 100 feet worth of space to use up. So that it's more than big enough room at Gamescom to be able to put showcases in that going forward. I think it is, like I say, if they were going to do that as an industry, I think that would be the best place for it. However, outside, and that's still a trade event essentially. That's still where you get everybody coming in, all of the press coming in as a trade event to see games early and play games early and things like that. That's still where all of the trade guys meet up, all of the devs meet up. Like that's as close as they're going to get to another E3-esque situation. But obviously it's in Europe and not in America. Outside of that, no, I think Summer Game Fest is going to have that June thing down. But even saying that, Jeff just claims everybody's individual showcases as part of his Summer Game Fest anyway. So even when Xbox, PlayStation, or Nintendo do it, he just claims it's Summer Game Fest and streams it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I think the devs will continue to do their own thing in June and July. I think they'll still do their showcases then. But Jeff's going to be the only one that kind of fills that little June void, that June-July void.
Yeah. I don't see it either that someone immediately will pick it up. All right. Man, I just Googled it. 12,000 people were at opening night live.
Oh, God. There was no chance there was 12,000 people in there.
Bro, you can easily underestimate that.
That did not look like 12,000 people. I think he's pulling our leg.
Just saying. Just saying. Oh, right, but no, I think Jeff will definitely try to do something. It won't be the same though, because he lacks the in-person event, and PAX and Gamescom are probably the likely candidates to swoop that up. So yeah, we will see how that will develop over time. But yeah, I'm still sad. E3 is gone. Doesn't come unexpected or surprisingly, but it's still uncool.
Yeah.
And I feel like our community here feels the same. If I browse through the chat here, it is what it is. We won't be able to change it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us move to something else. Something a little bit more exciting, maybe even. But first, our chat is on fire here today, which I love to see. And we have a lot of people watching us live here. And if you do enjoy the show, it would be absolutely awesome for you guys to hit the like button. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. We have the show every Thursday. And yeah, we appreciate you guys. So thank you so much. But Dutch, let's get into some Xbox news here today. Actually, we have multiple things about different Xbox games. Let us start with a smaller one, and that is Blade. Because ever since the reveal, a lot of people have been discussing it, as have we last week. Will it be exclusive or not? Why did Xbox not put a logo on it? Why didn't they even upload it onto their own YouTube channel? But all that changed now. They actually uploaded the Blade trailer onto the Xbox YouTube channel. And of course, at the very end, you can see the Xbox logo. Still no word per se on whether it's exclusive or not. But yeah, we all know it's going to be exclusive. And I think
the fact that it isn't available, the video isn't available outside of Arcane / Bethesda and Xbox. It isn't on any other. It's not on a PlayStation channel. It's not on anything else.
It's just on Bethesda, Arcane, and now Xbox. But we also got some cool official pictures from Arcane on the game, which are help me out with the word
concept art.
Concept art. Thank you. Some concept art shots for the game, and we also know now that the game has been in development since January 2022. So almost 2 years already in development, which is still, considering the usual 5 to 6, 7 year dev cycle, pretty early. But after its initial reveal, we thought, okay, they literally just started the development on Blade. But that's apparently not the case. So, yeah, man, what are your thoughts? Did you like the concept art? The game already being 2 years in development. When do you think we can see it again? What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I think we'll see the game maybe 27, 28. I think it's like, even though it's 2 years in development, a year of that will be essentially the coming up with the idea and jotting things down and doing all the basics.
A lot of prototyping. Usually the first 2 years in AAA development is all about prototyping. See what kind of mechanics work, what don't work, what does the game want to be, trying to find that out. What's the gameplay loop before going into full production. Early story writings, get an overall story arc. What kind of gameplay elements do you want to put in there? What's the combat system going to be like? Things like that. What's the traversal system? So, yeah, but I'm glad to hear, because I want that Blade game, man. I want it. I love the idea of having a mature Blade game. So 2 years already sounds like, okay, maybe when they said we just started production on it, they meant actual full production. We've finished the prototype phase, which is cool, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I wouldn't assume that the game comes out before 27. We have almost 24 now. Add another at least 3 years to it, so we are now in the year talking about the year 27. I still could even be 28, and by that it would make it probably a next gen game, man.
It could launch the next gen. It could very well be one of the launch titles on the next Xbox. But no, I'm liking the concept. Again, concept art can be taken as anything, but that's just to give you a general idea as the mood that they're going to in that game. And I like that in one of the pictures. I think one of the first pictures that they put up was Blade standing on like a street corner whilst people were going into a nightclub.
Yeah,
and that's kind of reminiscent of the first Blade film with Wesley Snipes in, where he goes into the nightclub and there's obviously the rain beating down, and you've got the Blade kind of soundtrack kicking off there. That everybody's very well aware of. It's like that hard kind of techno house that's going on in the nightclub, and he's kind of slicing people up, and there's a guy overdosing on the floor and things like that. And it's an intriguing look, and I'm glad they're going down that kind of gritty kind of timeline there as well. It's good to know the game is R-rated, because I think it wouldn't work otherwise.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's intriguing. Again, me and you both, it's hard to get hyped for something that is so far away.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing more of it closer to the time. But it's firmly in my back burners now. I'm like, it's cool. Like, that's in production. Forget about it.
Agreed. What I got from the concept art is that they are going for a mature look, but still colorful. You know, you had a lot of neon colors in there, popping colors in the concept art, and that's what concept art is for. Yeah, to give the artist an idea where to go with the art style, with the color choices, with the mood. That's the idea, and what I've seen, I really liked it. So But yeah, like you said, a game that is so far out, kind of hard to get excited for, but I'm still a little excited. So can't help myself. Another game that might be closer than we think could be South of Midnight.
Yes.
South of Midnight didn't get an official release window when they have shown it during this year's Xbox showcase. We didn't even see gameplay for it. It was just this cinematic trailer in engine that gave us an idea of the art style, the look, the vibe, the mood that they are going for. But according to the LinkedIn profile of one of the senior PR managers, a launch window for 24 is highly likely. So what do you think, man? Is this maybe one of the candidates? Because we know Xbox has games for 24 that have not been revealed or announced yet. Could South of Midnight be one of them?
It would be a surprise announcement, that's for sure. A very surprise announcement. I was still, based on what they unveiled, I would have thought
25.
I would have thought it would have been not even just that. I would have thought Clockwork would have been the one that squeezed into 24 based on what we saw.
Yeah.
We literally just got kind of an idea trailer, should we say, from South of Midnight. But if it's maybe, I'm not being kind of hard on the developer here, but it could be a smaller title than we are thinking it's going to be. In terms of South of Midnight, could end up being like a 15-20 hour game, as opposed to like, maybe it's not even that, as opposed to like a Clockwork, which is like a potentially 40, 50, 60 hour game, with it being kind of back and forwards and things like that. So it could be that, being a smaller title, it is out sooner than we think. And it was one of the PR guys for Xbox's LinkedIn, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think Idle Slot posted it. So it's intriguing. But that's whether or not that guy, and this is the only catch that I would say, whether or not that guy begins his PR work on South of Midnight fully in 2024, i.e. we get to see more of the gameplay this June, and therefore his PR stuff starts commencing in 2024, or whether or not the game is slated for release in 2024. Depends on what that means, what it means by his dates on there, because it could just be that it's just a
in his LinkedIn, it definitely sounded like he's preparing for launch in 24, because it was literally in that phrase, working on the PR for South of Midnight launch campaign 24 or something like that was the phrasing. So, but yeah, I do agree in terms of scope. I don't think, I mean, given the developer's track record, they literally only had 2 games. The first one was Contrast, which was a cool indie game, but it was a very indie game with We Happy Few. They tried to do something more, dive into the AA space, but yeah, that game clearly had a great vision, but it lacked in execution, and you don't know whether that's due to funding or not. Now that that Compulsion is under Microsoft, they had a lot more time, they had a lot more funding, and I mean, when was We Happy Few? That was, I want to say 2018. Someone in the chat can correct me. But that it would have given them to 24 a 6-year development cycle, which is within the normal range right now. But I'm still not 100% sure if that will be like a huge AAA banger blockbuster title, or whether it will be more like a AA game. Not saying anything against AA games, I love them, like Psychonauts 2, still not probably AAA, but definitely the best game of the year in 2020. I loved it. Pardon me, 21. When it came out, it was my game of the year. So but I don't think it's that South of Midnight is gonna be just AAA yet. But hey, who knows what they could have done with all the funding? We haven't seen anything of the game outside of this cinematic trailer, which set a real cool mood, dark and gritty, still with a lot of humor in it. It's a stylized art style. I don't want to say cel shaded, but they are. But it is, you know what I mean? Not really cel shaded, but you know what I mean. I don't know how to what the phrasing of that particular art style is, but it's I would be it would be a cool thing to see that. But I do agree. If any of the new reveals from this year's Xbox showcase, I would have thought Clockwork Orange, because they've shown a lot of gameplay for that game already. And there they literally said it's In Exile's first attempt into doing like a massive AAA game. And but since they have shown already so much gameplay, I would have assumed this is going to come out first. But yeah, we don't know. We don't know, man. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
All right. Dustin in the chat says it looks like stop animation. Yeah, that was really weird. They showed that game off in like what felt 20 FPS or so. Or that trailer.
South of Midnight is stop animation. Yeah, it is. It is. It's like into the Spider-Verse, which was also stop animation.
Right. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Let's stay on some of the Xbox games. And let's talk about Indiana Jones real quick, because we also got some smaller news on that. Because Disney actually had a big interview this week, and talked a lot about their gaming segment, and they said they talked about Indiana Jones and its exclusivity deal, that it made financial and strategic sense. Because the company's head of gaming thinks that omitting PlayStation didn't feel overly exclusionary. So, yeah, basically confirming again, Indiana Jones going to be exclusive, and it will still be available to almost everyone, because you can play it on PC, Xbox, xCloud, and with that basically on every device that has a display. And so I wondered, why did they bring up that particular game again when talking about their gaming strategy? I still have the feeling, man, that Indiana Jones is going to be closer than we think. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think it was originally slated in the court documents from ABK that it was like a 2022. So I think it might have been one of those titles that were pushed out when they were trying to figure out their roadmap and which games would release and when they would release, etc. I think that's ultimately what it would have been. I think it pushed back, but I think it's sooner. I think it's sooner than later that we see that, for sure. It could be this year. It could be the following year, but I think it's relatively soon. You're muted, by the way.
Sorry. Okay. That Todd Howard already confirmed that we are at least seeing it in 24. That they have more to show and talk about in next year. So, yeah, definitely. And on the exclusivity thing, I mean, there is no reason to make such a game not exclusive to the ecosystem. It makes sense for certain games with Xbox to stay, multi-plat. of course, Call of Duty comes to mind, or games like Minecraft, even Elder Scrolls Online. You leave those games multiplayer, but especially for single player experiences, there is no reason to go multiplayer. Absolutely not. And Indiana Jones, we know that already, going to be a single player game, So, yeah, I never had any doubt, and obviously Disney didn't have any objections to that. They also, in the same interview, talked about the KOTOR remake, Dutch.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we still don't know the future's game. Yeah, the future of the game, it's uncertain where this is going or if it ever will see the light of day. But Disney definitely confirmed that there is still a lot of demand for a remake of KOTOR. So, what do you think? Disney saying there's the demand. It kind of sounded to me like they are looking now for a developer to pick that up. Do you think we will ever see the KOTOR remake?
I think we'll see. It'll be redone entirely from scratch. I think it'll be somebody else's thing that goes on there, and it could very well happen. But I don't think it'll be that studio.
No, I will definitely. If it ever will come out, it will be by someone else.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, I think there's a possibility. I think they've seen some of especially the way that Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order has done, and even Star Wars Squadrons did all right as well in terms of its gameplay and how it performed. Not potentially commercially, but in terms of as a game, it was a good game. Star Wars Squadrons and Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order both did very well.
Yeah,
I think if they can get a studio to do something to that degree or that quality, then they'll absolutely jump on KOTOR again. But I think they're just going to be a little bit more picky on the studio that takes it over. Not a new studio. I think, if anything, they'll find a seasoned studio or a seasoned development team to do it, as opposed to an industry vet that's created a studio, because you don't have any guarantees that that's going to be a success or be able to continue trading. And in this case, her studio essentially is doing nothing right now.
I agree. I don't think if they will ever make such a remake, I don't even think that it's going to be like the same game that it was supposed to be. What's their name again? That screwed it up now.
Amy Hennig?
Yeah. There's the studio that was supposed to do the KOTOR remake. I just think they are putting it out there. Hey, if anyone wants to make a remake, not the same game, who wants to finish this remake, but like who wants to do it, and next time they will definitely be more careful with the choice of studio and the announcement. Not too early.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I would still love to have one, though.
I think with a lot of these things as well, they certainly have to be picky with the developers that they work with. Like, I was kind of was gutted for Delilah Studios and not picking up Best Family Game for Disney Island, because that is ultimately a 4-player co-op true Disney game. It's got all of the characters there. The artwork was fantastic. The platforming and the gameplay was fantastic. The story was cool. The music was cool. They nailed it all down, and Mario won for Best Family Game. I was like, come on. That's just a lazy choice. That's just lazy. That's just picking Nintendo for the sake of picking Nintendo. There was nothing Mario Wonders did that was any different to any previous other Mario game.
Yeah.
But that's Delilah Studios. As much as people might not know them as an indie developer, they're both seasoned and extremely capable. They've got a high quality output. Battletoads, as much as people might not have liked, there's a couple of things that could have been additions that I think would have done it better, in that it could have had online. And I think even still, Disney Illusion Island on Nintendo and Battletoads could have done with online multiplayer, which would have significantly increased its capabilities and its playability. And I'll have to bring that up to AJ again as well and understand why they chose to not do that and stick with a traditional couch co-op for both of those.
Yeah.
But in terms of the game that they released, and again, this goes down to the studios that they choose to do their games. If you have a look at the other Disney IPs that they've got, obviously we know Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. They've picked a very talented studio there to do that. If you have a look at Indiana Jones, they've picked a very talented studio to do that in Machine Games. If you have a look at Avatar, they've got a massively talented Ubisoft Massive doing that.
Yeah.
And it's extremely impressive. If you have a look at Squadrons, that was a very highly reputable studio that did that. If you have a look at over at Sony, they've got Insomniac doing Spider-Man, which is
and Wolverine now. Yeah.
If you have a look at Arcane Leon, that's a highly reputable studio doing Blade.
Yeah.
So I think primarily what Disney need to do, though, is if you're going to do some smaller titles, then pick the best indie teams that you can find to do those.
And usually Disney does that. Disney takes care of their IP.
They're a little bit more loose. Recently they were a little bit more loose on the IP and who gets to create games for Disney. They were just like, oh, we'll just give everybody a chance and see what works.
Yeah.
And I think they'll have learned their lesson with some of them now and just going, right, okay, for some smaller titles like these, like Mickey Mouse and thing games, we'll give them to some indie devs. For the big guys, will be a far more refined, and I think that's what they'll do going forward. I think they'll stick with seasoned AAA studios to do their games now.
Yeah.
Even if you have a look at Blinking Guardians of the Galaxy, the game, what a fantastic game, and that's a just damn shame that didn't get any more love. And people still, if they haven't played Guardians of the Galaxy, the game, you need to go out and play it.
One of the best superhero games ever made.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
I loved Guardians.
Story, music, gameplay,
humor,
all fantastic. The visuals, the humor,
everything. It has everything.
Yeah,
I agree.
So I think ultimately for KOTOR, I think KOTOR just shows why you can't, and it's sorry to say. But as a brand new studio, I think you need to get a couple of your own releases out the way off first before you try to tackle something as big as a remake, like a big KOTOR remake. KOTOR was a massive thing for them. And that was, I don't care how long in the industry you've been working for, you don't pick up an IP the size of Star Wars as your first ever game. That's
agreed.
I think that's just biting off too much.
Especially not in those footsteps when...
Yeah,
KOTOR is still one of the best Star Wars or most beloved Star Wars games ever made.
Not only that, but your studios, as much as you've been working in the industry for so long, and your staff might have, that studio's still got to learn to work together. They've still got to learn all the processes together. They've still got to learn the best way that they work as a team. Then they've got to kind of go through the process of creating a game from scratch again. I think it's better as a creative mindset for brand new studios to focus on creating their own IP first and foremost and try and get the success there and show what they can do as a brand new team, regardless of how long they've been in the industry. You have to prove yourself. And you've seen that with the guys that split off from Playground Games to focus on, it was, what was his name again? Was it Mike Chapman?
Yeah, he left along with
to create his own studio. Yeah, and they're doing something entirely different. They're doing their own brand new IP. I'm sure it's like an adventure game or something, like an adventure RPG or something, or action game or something like that.
I'm not even sure if they have said what they are going to do.
I think it's nothing to do with racing, but I'm sure it's some kind of adventure action game that they're creating. But they haven't said too much more than that. But I kind of know that that's the route that they're going down. So it's entirely different for them, considering they've all been working on Forza, and they weren't part of the team that wanted to go and work on Fable. But that's what they should do as a brand new team, is like, let's create our own ideas. Let's work together. Let's make something brand new. That's how you make a name for your studio. You don't jump straight onto a critically acclaimed, beloved IP and try and tackle that. I think that's, I think it's just too much.
So let's see where this goes and if we will ever see that KOTOR remake. But Dutch, let us switch topics real quick and talk about a leak earlier this week, and that's the PS5 Pro Specs leak. Again, we had some of those leaks before.
I'm just going to go and get my dump truck full of salt here.
So, I mean, Tom Henderson posted it on Reset Era and then, of course, on Twitter, and everyone picked that up. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm just gonna highlight some of the biggest things because it was actually a very detailed, very specific leak, and we'll talk about it in a second if it's legit or could be legit. So the new SoC is going to be based on the 4 nanometer process over at TSMC, which I think pretty likely makes sense. Then the Viola is the chip called, the SoC called, is maintaining the Zen 2 architecture for the CPU, which is already the CPU architecture we have right now in Xbox and PlayStation current gen consoles. The CPU will peak at 4.4 gigahertz, has 64 kilobyte of L1 cache per core, and 512 kilobyte L2 cache per core. Then what else? They leaked that Trinity is what it's called, is a culmination of 3 key technologies: fast storage with hardware accelerated compression and decompression, which is already an existing technology in the PS5, but also heavily putting or doubling down on accelerated ray tracing and upscaling, hardware-based upscaling technology. That reminded me a lot of what they did with the PS4 Pro, where they heavily advertised checkerboarding, And I mean, that would make sense, right? That you focus on that. NVIDIA has been doing that, obviously, with DLSS very heavily, trying to support with silicon upscaling. Then the GPU architecture is based on RDNA 3, but it's taking ray tracing improvements from RDNA 4. Yeah. So the hardware ray tracing will be fully relying on shaders. It will also include thread to reordering to reduce data and executing divergence. That is similar to Intel's ARC chips. So it will have 3,584 shaders, 224 TMUs, and 96 ROPs, which would be a substantial improvement, man. They will have 16 gigabyte of RAM, a GDDR6 RAM, with a bus speed of 576 gigabytes per second memory bandwidth. The GPU is targeting 2 gigahertz, which then would roughly translate to 28.67 teraflops. They will have a 50 to 60% rasterization uplift. And I think that's pretty much it. And the reveal will be in September 24. Yeah. So, what do you think, Dutch? Legit? Does it seem logical? You miss anything? What are your thoughts, man?
I don't think it seems that logical, to be fair, and I don't think the teraflops are that high either. I think that's incorrect. But also, they're still limiting themselves to. I still don't understand why console manufacturers are limiting themselves to 16 gig of RAM. I don't understand it. I still don't understand it to this day. A lot of the bottlenecks come from either the CPU or the fact that the RAM's not there. And I'm talking bottlenecks as in it's really limiting what those consoles can do by having such low RAM.
Yeah.
Like the first thing you do if a computer comes with 16 gig of RAM is upgrade it to 32. The first thing you do, minimum. If you want a game to run as good as it can run, you upgrade it like straight away. You can run games fine on 16 gig, but you will absolutely know a world of difference in how games perform and how the system performs when you've got double that.
Yeah.
And the RAM does not cost that much. They're not using it's not costly at all, especially when you're talking like mass manufacturing. Like if I was to get like an additional 16 gig of RAM now for my laptop, it would only cost me £50 for 16 gig at 3200 megahertz.
Yeah,
which is a significant amount of speed. And if you add that, obviously that's 32 gig at 3200 megahertz. It's a significant amount. It runs every game. That would run every game at ultra at like well into the 70, 80, 90, 100 frames per second.
Yeah.
No problem. And this is one of the drawbacks. This is what developers have to cope with as well, is because of how much what's the overhead. And one of the overheads you have to look at is what's the RAM pool, and 2 of those gigs of that 16 gig RAM pool is already associated to system.
Yeah.
So you've actually only got 14 gig to work with. So there's a limiting factor straight away. And I still don't understand why these Pro models don't have increased RAM capability.
And that's a general issue that I have with consoles, because when it comes to hardware specs, because you always have that shared memory pool. While if you don't do the APU approach, you usually have in your graphics card dedicated video memory, and then you have your actual RAM. But I do agree. I've seen a lot of people jump on the 28 teraflops, because teraflops has been always like, the method to measure, power. Yeah, but it's really not, because it starts with the issue. How do you calculate teraflops? Let's start with that. Make it very simple. You could also say it only has 14 teraflops because of the dual issue factor. So if you ignore that, so what's it really like? And then what do teraflops say? Teraflops is the amount of floating point operations you can do per second. And it really doesn't tell you how efficiently you are doing that. I remember I did a video like 3 years ago or so when we were in the lead up to the launch of the Xbox Series consoles, and trying to explain that. The problem with that is really... sorry, I have to change the gameplay real quick in parallel. I'm so bad in multitasking, talking, and changing gameplay. However, the amount of operations, floating point operations you can do per second, which is teraflops, how many floating point operations you can do, really doesn't tell you the whole story, because it is always also very much related to a lot of other things, like how efficient you do certain operations. I always say, if you want to make a coffee with milk, you can do that in different ways. You can first pour in the coffee, then pour in the milk, and then take a spoon and stir everything up. And you need 3 steps to do that. If you pour in first the milk and then the coffee, you don't have to stir it up. You have the same result with 2 operations. And that's the question that comes in with efficiency of architecture. So teraflops really isn't like the whole story. then we look at some of the other numbers in there. The amount of shaders, the amount of compute units, which is now significantly increased. Yeah, that helps you, but you also have to like really do work for that, because you have to parallelize a lot of your work issues if you run on more compute units. Yeah, and that's a factor. Then the ROPS is of course a big question here, which is, according to this leak, a substantial increase. I'm just saying, yeah, we really can't talk about teraflops anymore. You can use that as a metric for certain things. If you compare two systems within the same architecture, yes, then you can do it. Like, yeah, if we still talking about RDNA 2, and you can't really even compare PS5 and Xbox Series X in that regard, because they both run on different architectures. So the 9 point something teraflops the PS5 has, and the 12 point something teraflops the Series X have, still not exactly the same architecture. So yeah, it's hard to compare those numbers and take those as a metric and just say, oh yeah, PS5 Pro is going to run 4 times faster because it now has, or 3 times faster because now it has 3 times as many teraflops as the base system. That's really not how this works. So yeah, there are 2 things that stuck out to me. The first is sticking with the Zen 2 architecture. Why would you do that? If true, why would you do that? And don't tell me it's because of compatibility, because you're not really bound to that. We have Zen 4 CPUs already out on the market, and on PC, every game that runs on a Zen 2 architecture runs on a Zen 4 architecture. It's really not that. You have to do extra work anyway to make the dev kits compatible. You will have 2 SKUs, just like Xbox has with Series X and Series S. You have to optimize for both anyway. And why not use the significantly more efficient Zen 4 architecture there? So that's a weird part to me. On the GPU side of things, they moved over to RDNA 3 with certain things of RDNA 4, which sounds reasonable. RDNA 3 just launched. They have the RDNA 3.5, what AMD calls it, already on the horizon, but not with the things that they highlighted here, that they said, okay, we are taking RDNA 4 ray tracing, hardware acceleration, and put it in the RDNA 3 architecture. RDNA 3.5 on the AMD side of things is actually related to something else. So yeah, but still, that would be a good improvement to make. I don't know. That's really the thing. And you already mentioned the memory pool with 16 gigs. Not sure if you would stick to that. It really depends, of course, at the very end of the day, what price point are they targeting with that console? Yeah, if they want to still remain in the same price area that they are in right now, maybe increase it a little and go to 600 or so. Yeah, that seems like something that they could pull off. And of course, the big question is, how much faster will it actually be? I don't know. I really don't know. And I think no one really knows. Given from those numbers, I would assume overall power increase of 40%, 50%, something like that. 1.5 times faster than the system we have right now, plus minus, of course. it would be my guess that we could end up there. But yeah, who really knows? What do you think about all the architectures? Because I've seen a lot of people argue about that, and that being the reason why this leak might be also fake. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. I don't think it's fake, but I don't think it's also. I don't think it's true. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. As far as I've seen in terms of the leaks overall, it's still running a Zen 2 architecture, but it borrows things from future Zen architectures like Zen 4, etc., which also doesn't make sense as to why you would stick with Zen 2 and then just take a few features from the later versions of Zen. If that's to do with compatibility, it still doesn't make much sense.
Well, they did the same thing with the PS5, right?
Yeah, but
it's basically RDNA 1.5 architecture
with parts of 2.
Yeah,
but it doesn't really make too much sense if you're doing an upgraded version. Like, why wouldn't you just go to do a middle ground in between them two and say, okay, we'll just do Zen 3 for this version then, instead of we'll stick with Zen 2 and borrow ray tracing capabilities from Zen 4? Because then you get to Zen 4 and you won't have any more increased capabilities on ray tracing when you do your next gen console, but you'll have then some of the added benefits that Zen 4 has, but you'll have zero capabilities to increase the workload on the ray tracing, because that's still the same as it was then, unless they then do another leap ahead and do some weird hybrid system again when Zen 6 or 7's out, when the next gen console comes out. It just doesn't make much sense as to why PlayStation keeps doing this hybrid system of just borrowing bits and bobs from everywhere and meshing it into something that kind of works, as opposed to doing the process that Xbox had. And granted, Xbox haven't showcased really what that system can do as yet, but I think games like Fable and Hellblade, etc., will start to see what those systems look like when they're all in fruition at the same time. But ultimately, in the long run, I think it would end up just creating more of a headache for developers, having these mishmash of things that, okay, we've borrowed something from here and some things from here, and this could work kind of with this, but then we're limited with, because of some of the issue, like some of the restraints that Zen 2 has as to just how capable that Zen 4 stuff would be on a Zen 2 chip.
Yeah.
Like, there's many drawbacks to the process.
That's the thing. And also don't forget the importance of driver support. Having like these mishmashes of architectures makes the driver support on AMD side a lot more challenging.
Yeah. As opposed to literally being able to just run out, if you've just, like Xbox is, it has Zen 2 in every feature that comes out with Zen 2, which means that if they just run out a generic Zen 2 update, it will just apply. There'll be no mishmash. There'll still be some optimization to do, but nowhere near on the side of PlayStation, where it's a 1.5 with some features from Zen 2.
Yeah, I agree.
It would take far more work.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why I'm still a little iffy on these on this leak. I mean, it looks at least most certainly possible that this could be something. Yeah, I see people in the chat, Portal Bayer and Dustin, Pyro, already discussing it because of the increased clock speed with 4.4 gigahertz. Well, the 4.4 increase in clock speed, it does a little compared to what they have right now. However, I think the big difference comes from the significantly higher compute units, which is rumored to be 52 in use, 56 or something, if I remember correctly, on the chip, for being, of course, for binning, sorting it out and activating then 52. Of course, that would be already a boost towards the I want to say 36 or 32 CUs that they have right now. 30 something CUs that they have right now in the PS5. That would give them a boost. However, let's not forget Zen 2 really is outdated, and you kind of have to match And it becomes again the question of the bottleneck. You know what I mean? If you go RDNA 3 to at 2 gigahertz, that would be then the CPU would already be the bottleneck. Definitely, you could already argue it kind of is already again the bottleneck in the consoles. When we all thought, okay, after leaving that dreadful Jaguar CPUs that we had in PS4 and Xbox Ones, which is a super old and outdated CPU architecture. Yeah, then we have moved on in the Series X and PS5 Pro to Zen 2, and still to find out, okay, consoles are right now more or less bottlenecked by their CPUs. Yeah, why wouldn't you invest in removing the bottleneck and doubling down again on GPU side of things? That's what's a little bit weird to me, but maybe I'm just giving it too much thought, and it's at the very end.
We've said this before. I think personally, I would like to see Xbox do away with the APU.
Yeah.
I would like to see PlayStation do away with the APU and just concentrate on having a CPU and a GPU, like traditional systems would. Again, that boils down to cost. APUs are cheaper than individual CPU, GPU. But then with an APU, you have these bottlenecks that crop up because it is a singular unit. You have something that's been refined with both in mind at the same time, both linked together, both as a singular.
That's one thing.
Not individual. And you can't update one without the other. You can't update the CPU without the GPU because it's a singular. You can't.
Well, you could argue you can't do that in a console anyway, unless you really make like a plug and play kind of system.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying. In the console, you can't update the CPU without the updating the GPU. You can't because it's an APU. Everything's updated at the same time. On a PC, you can update the CPU or install drivers for the CPU to have refinements or correct issues, or you can update the GPU, which we get every other day from NVIDIA.
True that. Even worse.
And every time a new game releases, there's a new patch. Every time a new game releases, there's a new patch and a new patch, and every time a big game comes out with a new DLSS update, or something like that, even if you don't have an RTX 4 series, you still get all of the updates that the RTX 4 series would get on an NVIDIA card. You still get them. So you still update them. It still has patches for other things, but it still gives you them, regardless of whether or not you've got 40 series or whatever. And that's the one thing that consoles lack, is they don't have that maneuverability for updating things individually. They can't update the CPU without the GPU. That it's interesting. I think, and I have to agree with Luke. Dump NVIDIA and go dump AMD and go NVIDIA. Console.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I still have not understood. The only one doing that is Nintendo.
Yeah.
You know, having the NVIDIA GPU in there. I don't understand it either, honestly, because I would assume that NVIDIA would be highly interested to get in the console market. That's one of the only, bigger GPU markets where they have not a foothold in yet. So I can't assume that NVIDIA wouldn't be interested in doing that. Of course, I can see AMD binding their CPU to the GPU for the console manufacturers. And you're not getting our AMD CPUs and then slap a NVIDIA GPU on that silicon. Yeah, some deals like that. But then, hey, let's go to Intel for the CPU and let's go to NVIDIA for the GPU, and you can still make an APU out of that. That's definitely possible, and I would assume that NVIDIA would be interested to get a proper foothold there. But leaving the APU design also has the big benefit, especially for Xbox, that you would be way closer to the PC versions of the game. the main reason why porting PC games over to consoles takes time and effort, or one of the biggest parts of doing that, is the fact that you have to redesign the games for the APU architecture. So leaving that, I agree, would be super beneficial for them. But I'm not sure if it is within the cost possible, or in the price range, because you basically would get a similar performance than with an APU than with dedicated CPU and GPU, but you would nearly double the price. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what personally, to me, that's what a Pro model should be.
Yeah, but then you would also expect like a significant power increase.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying. Like, if we're talking about what an actual Pro model should be, like a legitimate Pro model of something or anything, that you've got a standard version, which is the Series X and the PlayStation 5. The Pro model should be the all bells and whistles, £1,000, whatever it is. That is a Pro version. That one should have everything known to man. That is like I'm personally sick of calling these Pro models these minor bump ups, because let's face it, compared to what we got, like even if you have a look at the PS4 versus PS4 Pro, graphically the bump up was pretty decent, but ultimately it was down to resolution. It wasn't really down to fidelity.
It was very similar with the One X. It was a resolution bump. The jump was a little bit bigger with the One X than it felt with the PS5 Pro.
But ultimately, in terms of what you still got the same games. You still got pretty much the same quality. You had a little bit extra headroom for performance, but was it a Pro model console? No, it was just a mid-gen refresh. So I think it's kind of disingenuous to call any of them Pro models. If they're in the same price bracket, they're still constrained by the same pricing schedule, and the jump ups in power aren't significant enough to be able to say, okay, well, this game's going from playing at like medium to high settings at 30 to 60 frames to what an actual Pro version of a console should be able to do, which is everything in Ultra at 60 frames.
Yeah,
like that's ultimately what a Pro model should do, is be able to give you that, right? Okay, this is the definitive, like, absolute bells and whistles console. This isn't for everybody. This is like, if you ultimately want an almighty powerful unit that like gives you maximum performance and maximum visual fidelity that we can offer on consoles, it's £1,000, and this is like everything. This is everything full bells and whistles. This is giving you the best of the best. And that's what a Pro model should be. It shouldn't be just a refinement with a slight power boost in all areas. It should be like double the power. That's essentially what a Pro model is. If you have a look at phones, if you go from like a generic like Galaxy S21 to the S21 Ultra, the jump in quality and performance from the base model to the Ultra model, which is the Pro version of that phone, is night and day. Like, one of them chugs along, barely runs apps as you can handle it, like one or two apps at the same time. The other one's running 50 things at the same time, playing games, phone calls, music, the lot, everything without breaking a sweat, and the battery lasts forever. That's what Pro models of things should do ultimately. And this is like, you see the same in PCs. If you're investing like average parts across your PC, you're going to get average performance. If you invest in your PC significantly and you give yourself a Pro model, like Luke has in the chat there with the 4090 and all the bells and whistles, you're going to get the best performance that PC has to offer.
Yeah.
It's the same in everything. Laptops are exactly the same. You can get a standard gaming laptop with like a 3060 or a 3070 and you're going to get good performance. Don't get us wrong, you're going to get great performance. But there's always that top tier model of that exact same laptop that has a 4090 in with 32 gig of RAM, 2 gig of SSD space, and everything that goes with it, in an OLED screen, and you name it, it's covered.
Yeah,
like that's what consoles, in my opinion, that's what Pro consoles should be. It shouldn't just be this intermediate mid-gen refresh that's slapped
right, and you're still stuck at the same price point.
Yeah,
I've been saying that for a long time, man. Because if you think about it, for whom is a Pro model? For whom is the mid-gen upgrade?
If you have a look at who invests in the actual Pro models, like the PS4 Pro or the One X, the actual sales figures for the One X or the PS4 Pro over the base models was like 1 million out of 40 million.
Yeah.
Or in the case of PlayStation,
exactly.
2 or 3 million out of 120 million.
And that's my point. Yeah, the mid-gen upgrades are for the hardcore gamers anyway. And let's be honest to ourselves. We would pay $1,000 to get a Series XL or whatever it would be called, you know. And
or Series X Elite, like the elite badge that they use for the 360.
Series X Elite, whatever you want to call it, but we would pay that kind of money because we use our systems. We just all got our yearly wrap-ups, and we spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours every year in front of the console. So obviously we would invest into that. The regular Series X would still be there, you know?
Yeah.
For everyone who wants to get a console at around price point of 500 plus minus. But yeah, the mid-gen upgrades are for the fans, the hardcores. So doubling down on specs there, and then make it a little bit more expensive. I think that would be the way to go. But let me ask you now that we know that the PS5 Pro basically exists, whether those specs are now real or not. Some of them might, some of them might not. Things will also change, especially when we talk about clock speeds and whatnot. Those are finalized very, very late in development cycle, because at the very end of the day, that really depends on a lot of things, like how good will TSMC's line, for instance, of the chip actually be? Yeah, if you have a lot of binning issues there, you might not get the clock speed you initially intended to. So yeah, it take it all with a grain of salt. Specs, those kind of specs are frozen relatively late. Of course, core design issues like which architecture we're going for, what kind of RAM do we use, which buses do we use, and so on. Those are decided relatively early, but especially things like clock speeds, amount of compute units are frozen relatively late. So might not even be the case that they have finalized those yet. But now also we got we got an idea. The PS5 Pro is probably coming next year. The leak said reveal in September, which, by the way, sounds a little bit late to me.
Yeah.
Every console comes out in November, right? Except the Nintendo consoles, but Xbox and PlayStation have always released their consoles in November. So PS5 Pro definitely coming in November next year. A September reveal might be already a little late. You could also argue, of course, hey, there's no need to announce it earlier because you still want to sell PS5s up until the point. However, do you think that this is going to happen, like September reveal, November? And do you think Xbox should do one too, or might be in trouble if they don't? Where do you stand on that point?
If PlayStation releases the console that they're going to release, it's not going to be too much of a difference. Overall, I think they're going to have more issues than anything else, as we've mentioned there, with bottlenecks. That the CPU will cause, mainly the CPU will cause, and the RAM. I think they're massively constraining themselves with just sticking with 16 gig of RAM and a Zen 2 CPU. It just doesn't make sense. They can increase the power factor everywhere else, but ultimately it's not going to make a blind bit of difference because they're just going to bottleneck themselves. So I think if based on those specs, if that released, Xbox don't have too much issues, to be fair. And ultimately, the way that you're actually outside of third party, the way that you're looking at what is produced going forward will be the first party output. And and how the first party output performs and how that is stacking up visually and how that's performing. And Xbox are focusing more on the first party output than they are on worrying about third party output. I don't care really if there's like a 5 frames difference in it or the visuals are like 200 pixels less than the competitor. Right now, they're focused more on making sure the first party's right, which is what they should have been doing all along, than the third party. And I think previously they were focused more on how our console performs overall to the third. Really, if you have a look at the casual consumer, they don't give a flying shit if there's a 5 frames difference on COD on Xbox versus PlayStation, or if there's like a 200. No normal consumer, no normal person who's picking up a console is noticing a 200 megapixel difference between.
But that's the thing. The Pro or mid-gen refresh consoles are not for the normies.
That's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying. So outside of the bubble that we've created in this gaming space online, this finite bubble of a couple of million gamers at most, out of the hundreds of millions of gamers around the world that are going to invest in these pro consoles, that look at these things in depth, in the grand scheme of things, why would you ultimately be concerned about that tiny portion that are going to be concerned about whether one console has 100 pixels or 5 frames more than the other for a couple of years, when ultimately you should be concentrating on how good your first party output is going to be and how good looking and how well performing that is on your device. Now, there's also rumors that Xbox are going to potentially begin the next gen a couple of years earlier than originally anticipated. So they're actually just going to forego the Pro model. They're going to have a mid-gen refresh, but it's just going to be ultimately just a literally, it's not even going to be a Pro. It's going to be like a slimish refinement with a couple of extra things here to make things a little bit smoother. Maybe it's a digital only, but that's just what that is. It is just a refinement of the current model, nothing more. But their rumor is that they're going to just forego the Pro and jump straight into the next gen version earlier than the competition, a year or two earlier. Now, I've forgotten which generation it was, but there was and it was recent. Was it not the PS4 and the Xbox One?
No, it was the 360. The 360 came out a year earlier than the PS6.
A year earlier, yeah. And did that affect the gen all too much by releasing earlier? No.
No, but the difference was that the PS3 had this weird cell architecture that nobody was used to work on. Now, if you do that in this day and age, where they both run on x86 architectures and they were very comparable, a year difference just makes a difference in whether you put in a Zen 2 or Zen 3. If the Series X would have come out a year later, they would have had a Zen 3. You know?
For instance, if they released the next Xbox 2 years earlier or a year earlier, whatever it is, then a Pro model for them mid-gen the next time would make more sense than it would for PlayStation to do it. And by the time
why wouldn't it make sense this gen?
It depends, no, because we haven't actually done anything with these consoles to just in terms of visual fidelity and what these consoles are capable of and the equipment they've actually got in them. None of the games that have released so far have pushed these units to their maximum.
Whilst I do agree there that
more on first party than third, because third's restrained by an amalgamation of so many things to optimize for that they really can't. I mean, Avatar's the only one that is pushed, to me recently, the only one that's pushed things across the board on every console and done as much as they can. And actually, I've just retweeted and I've put that in the private chat there as well. The head of I'm telling you, let's go back right there. A technical breakdown there from a guy at UB Massive. Let's have a look. He is the tech director at Ubisoft Massive, giving a full breakdown as to console performance and optimization for Avatar Frontiers, as to what their workload is to optimize the game and how they optimize the game to work on all platforms. Really fascinating to be fair. It was a multi-tweet breakdown there as to their process. And that's what that's what I hope a lot of studios begin to do going forward. He had automated systems in that told them when there was areas that needed improvement, and they would go back and fix those areas and so on and so forth and optimize individually. But ultimately, when we're talking about how these consoles perform, you're only going to see either the PS5 or the Xbox actually at their best when their first-party stuff is getting pumped out. That's when you're going to see what these consoles are capable of. We're going to see it with the likes of Hellblade. We're going to see it with the likes of Fable. We're going to see it with all of those games coming up. But PlayStation, we've seen great-looking games. We've seen God of War, which looks fantastic, but God of War was cross-gen. Then they added a patch. We haven't seen, really, for PlayStation, that PS5 only hit. Like, Spidey 2 was there, but is that something that you would class as pushing the limits of that console? Because it's not. That's not doing everything that console can do.
No, I would say none of the first-party games on either sides have done that.
Yeah.
There were a couple of third parties that did some real amazing things. Alan Wake comes to mind.
Yeah.
Right there, like
Avatar, Cyberpunk
eventually. Avatar is probably close to it. Pushing of definitely the limits. My thing with mid-gen refresh consoles is I understand that you could argue all day long, yeah, they haven't used everything that that the consoles have to offer, and very few games ever will. Even if you have no,
you tend to find it's at the end of the generation is when you
even
see the
towards the end of the generation. There's always this thing. How much effort do you put into optimizing a certain console version? Then with Xbox, you have two SKUs that you have to optimize for, and so on. And I mean, a lot of these tools have been on PC for a long, long time. Barely any game uses it there either. So that's really the thing. And at the same time, technology simply moves forward. We wouldn't probably never think about using our phones for 4 years, right? And if you have a PC...
Two for me. 2 years and then swap.
2, maybe 3 years, and then you usually move on, right?
Yeah. And
then you talk about things like the PC. If you look on PC, if you buy today a good PC, like
actually you were talking about phones here. That is a good way to discussing a mid-gen refresh, because ultimately what happens 1 year to the next phone that comes out after the model that you've got is just like barely an upgrade. It's barely a change.
Exactly.
The second model after that usually is the one that's took a little bit more of a leap. That's when the camera is significantly better and the screen technology is much better, and
exactly
refine things a little bit more.
If you wait 2-3 years, you will actually feel an upgrade.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we need like new consoles every year, like we have basically with on the PC market with the GPUs, and CPUs. There's barely a year going by where we don't have like an upgrade. Yeah, look at Nvidia. Yeah, they have they bring out the 40 series, and the next year they bring the 40 Ti's, and then you move on to the 50 series, and so on. That's just how it goes. But my point is, if we think about a classic console cycle of 7-8 years, there's no way in hell you are getting like state-of-the-art performance out of a 7 or 8 year old console.
Do you think?
And hang on, let me finish my point. And the thing really is. Developers have not been using everything, and we have not seen everything that the console has to offer. I get that. But it will take many years, and by the time that they do use everything in a console, if they do, everything that the console has to offer is outdated. So, as much as it pains me to say, you will never get close to having state of the art. Of course, that's high-end PCs, and you pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to get that performance. Yeah. But I want the option on a console. And it is an option, and the mid-gen upgrade is an option. If you don't feel like you need to upgrade so be it. Please continue on your Series X or PS5. That's the whole point about an optional upgrade. But we look at games like Starfield, and I love Starfield, but I would have loved to play it at 60 on my console. I would have loved to. I would have loved to, and we will have the very same discussion, Dutch, when we will talk about Hellblade. Which, we have. I'm now sitting here with Avatar, loving the game, but I'm going back and forth between 30 and 60 because I don't like 30 FPS. I want the 60 FPS. But then I look at the 60 FPS mode and it's blurry as fuck. It's just... That's
the
what it is.
I was going to ask you, Bobsy, the question I was going to ask you is, would you think the time is right now to start looking at reducing the console life cycle to 5 years, say? Shrink that life cycle down, and instead of having those mid-gen refreshes, having a shorter console life cycle and just going straight to the next one?
No, I don't think that's necessary, because really having shorter life cycles forces people into that. Listen, we have now 3 years.
But if we're thinking about the way that they currently do things, which is the mid-gen refresh is the same price as what the previous console was. If you're sticking with the pricing structure as they are, if you're sticking with the pricing structure, which as much as we want them to do a Megabucks Pro version that's 1,000 or 800 or whatever it is, like the likelihood is they'll not do that. But if they're sticking with the pricing structure, ultimately, if they're going to do that, I don't see a real point in these mid-gen refreshes, because the jump, like as we saw last gen, the jump was going from 1080p to 4K, from 30 frames to 60 in some games, but having the option to have a performance mode at least compared to what we didn't have. So you had a jump that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
Now the jump this time around isn't going to be as significant. You're not going to go from 1080 to 4K. You've already got 4K. Even if it's an upscaled method, it makes no difference. 4K is 4K. It can be upscaled, checkerboarded, native, whatever. Natives, as we've discussed many times, are waste of resources. So it's pointless doing native res anyway. You could have a native res game, but it's just going to be a waste of resources, whether or not it's a pro console.
Yeah.
So the actual jump in what we're getting revolves more around, okay, so how much more fidelity can we put in? How much more performance can you get in? Can you eke out an extra 10 frames in this compared to the previous one? Or have the extra bells and whistles on the ray tracing that we've added really subjugated the extra frame rate? So now you're just still at the same frame rate, but now the ray tracing's more improved. So it's all these things that it's more nuanced things now we're seeing with these mid-gen refreshes, as opposed to the leaps that we've had previously. And it's going to be a long way off until we start talking about 8K resolution and stuff like that as a legitimate thing in consoles or gaming in general. Like 8K is so far off. Like PC is fine if you've got a 4090 with like 64 gig of RAM. Then you can talk about trying to play games at 8K Ultra on PC. But console, that's so far in the future, even thinking about talking about that stuff, that the ultimate differences in performance and visual fidelity on a mid-gen refresh versus what we're getting now isn't the leap that we're kind of hoping for, I personally think. And I think shortening the life cycle would allow console manufacturers to go, right, okay, this is your console. In 4 years' time, we'll then unveil the next console, which will have the next architecture. So you'll be going from Zen 2 to Zen 4 to Zen 6. You'll have these two gaps. Obviously, naturally, Zen improves pretty much every other year. So you'll jump a couple of Zens every time. Again, you'll have that base model. But ultimately, as people do with their phones, and they're lying if they don't say this, there's a very finite amount of people that don't upgrade their phones every couple of years. Very few amount of people. The people that don't upgrade their phones are literally not using it for anything other than texting and calling.
Yeah.
People that upgrade their phones, which is a lot of people, quite a lot of the time, whether it be every 1 or 2 years or every 3 years, are people that are taking photos all the time, or recording videos all the time, or traveling quite a bit, listening to music, playing games. And that's a big portion of the mobile market, which is why there's so many variances. So I personally think, instead of doing these pro versions, just reduce the console life cycle. Just say, okay, this is the Xbox Series X. 4 years' time, we're going to have the Xbox Series, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's the next one, and that's going to have an actual difference in its capability.
Yeah, I do get what you trying to say there, but the thing is, if you do every 4 or 5 years like a next gen, how do you handle compatibility? And it's really forcing people.
Same way PC does,
but then it is forcing people to upgrade every 5 years. But the beauty of a mid-gen upgrade is that it is completely optional. It leaves the decisions to the gamers. It is an option that is provided, and you can.
I mean, it's a thing we both buy, but that's not the point.
we too buy those. Absolutely, yeah. If Xbox would do a mid-gen upgrade, I would buy it in a heartbeat, no doubt. I'm really not sure about a PS5 Pro right now, because if I simply look at the roadmap ahead. And
there's nothing there.
Yeah, me using the PlayStation mainly as my exclusive machine. I hardly ever play the third parties on PlayStation. I do that on Xbox. So there's and looking at the roadmap, what's the point right now? Yeah, that's what my issue is. But I love the idea of having like better performance. Better that the performance mode in games not looking as blurry as it is right now in Avatar, or I remember like Dying Light, also super blurry performance mode, barely playable, and I play like everything I can in performance mode, but sometimes simply too blurry, and I don't want that, you know. And I want to be able to play a Starfield at 60, and I want to be able to play a Hellblade 2 at 60, and a Fable, and want that option. But it is an option, and there might be gamers out there that say, "Hey, it's not worth it for me. It's okay. What I have right now, and I can play that another 3-4 years until the actual next gen starts." Yeah, but give me the option. So. I don't think like starting a new gen all the time.
The reason I was saying that though, Boxy, was mainly just because, as we mentioned, pro or mid-gen refreshes.
Yeah.
To me, if they're not going to like we've mentioned, with the pro or the mid-gen refresh really not being aimed at the casual market and mainly the kind of hardcores that invest in new technology quite frequently, especially us who do that all the time. If we're not getting, and this is specifically for the pro model, nothing else, if we're not getting essentially that actual pro model that is going to be a significant jump, like realistically, would it not be better to just have a shorter life cycle? Because even when you're doing this thing, you're going to have 4 years of that one, which is still compatible with the one that releases the next time. Then by the time you get to 6 years or 6 years into that one, and you're at 2 years into the next gen life cycle, people are then ready to upgrade to that one, and then you've got another 2 years left of that console life cycle. Then that 6 year period. If you have a look at that block of 6 year period, and we're talking like the Xbox Series X, its cross gen kind of mid fade was a year and a half. PS4 to PS5 was about 2 years. So that cross-gen mid-fade anyway was about 2 years, where they kind of ceased compatibility with the previous one and then started moving on to the next. So if you have a look at that console life cycle, by the time people catch up, which is what they do, you're still going to have that buffer in between of like 2 years where someone doesn't have a new console, then they get the next one, and then they've got a good couple of years with that next console, and then the next one comes out, they've got a good couple of years with that console, and then the next one comes out. So
yeah, but if you look at the time or how long cross-gen took, it took us 3 years to leave cross-gen. If we're talking about a 5-year console gen, and so.
And that wasn't down. That wasn't down specific. That wasn't down to first party primarily. That was down to third party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So absolutely. That's what took so long. And all I'm saying is for those of us the people that invest in technology quite frequently, there's always going to be that margin. We see it on PC all the time. There's still games recent to this day that are on 10 series or 20 series cards. Like these cards are like a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and more. And there's still releasing games that are compatible with them. Like, So when we're talking about both consoles being on x86 architecture, the compatibility thing starts to becoming less of an issue when it's talking about optimization, because they're still both going to be on x86. They're still going to be able to be optimized like you would on PC. You're just refining them down a bit each time. And you're still going to have that cross-gen kind of patch in between one console recent to another. I just think for those of us that invest in technology frequently, as opposed to doing a next-gen refresh, you may as well either go full pro and do bells and whistles full pro in the middle of a gen, or just do another, or just start the next gen. It's one of the two, because that's the only way you're going to get an actual power jump that is going to be worth the cost. Otherwise, like me and you, we're just going to invest in it because we want new technology, not necessarily.
But again, it would force people rather sooner than later to upgrade. And you say that, but a lot of people
people do spend more on this than they do on consoles.
They absolutely do. But most people do use the phone a lot more than they do the console.
But then there's always, from both of them now, PlayStation probably through somebody else, but from Xbox specifically, you've got Xbox All Access, which allows you to go through and upgrade the console after a certain period and get the next one, and so on and so on. So there's ways of means of people, if they do contract forms for things like this, to upgrade frequently.
I mean, I do get your point. I would still rather see an optional mid-gen upgrade that is actually meaningful.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, personally, if they're going to continue with the mid-gen stuff, then do it properly, is what I'm kind of ultimately getting to. If we're going to continue with this mid-gen refresh that has to remain compatible, then do it properly and give a significant reason to have a mid-gen refresh, not this kind of in-between shit that kind of gives you a little bit of performance.
That's the thing with a lot of people when I see them talk about mid-gen upgrades. What's the reason why you would do one? Last gen, it made sense because at the very same time, we had the transition in our home theaters from 1080p to 4K screens. Those had a reason to exist, It was just the new standard that was established with 4K at the same time. We don't have anything like that right now. 8K is not a standard, not even close, and it's probably never going to be a standard.
And honestly. It's expensive as shit as well. 4K TVs start at like $4,000.
Yeah, exactly. You mean 8K?
Sorry.
And the difference is barely noticeable to anyone. While the jump from 1080p to anything else is 1080p to 4K is noticeable to everyone. So you don't have the same effect with 8K. I'm not saying there's no difference. I'm just saying it's not a big of a deal. And it's gonna be a long time until we see 8K established. So what would be the reason to do the mid-gen upgrades? Is it simply for a few more frames? Is it simply for the reason to have a few more pixels in there? It's not an obvious reason out there. And for that reason alone, the update must be, like you said, a lot more substantial, so that you are not talking about frames and pixels, but you're talking about settings. We are going from high to ultimate settings, or from low to mid or high settings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or if you're talking about ray tracing, for instance, not just talking about like, oh, this guy's got like ray traced lighting and ray traced audio. No, if we're going to do ray traced, you want to like what Cyberpunk has managed to do, ray tracing. Like, that's a jump. That's a significant jump in technology. We're talking about DLSS 3 and all the bells and whistles that come with that on PC.
Yeah.
And what that's able to do with ray tracing on PC now is significant compared to what we're able to do on console. Like if you're talking about a jump in capabilities, what that is able to do there is far in advance of what we're getting on these consoles.
Yeah,
and that's what we ultimately need for a Pro. Is like, okay, we're not going to get like Cyberpunk levels of ray tracing on a £1,000 console. You're not going to get that. But something along those lines, or the ultra settings, or like, okay, you have the ability to do 4K at 120 with high settings, like these things,
something like that. Yeah. Drawn TJ sends in a $2 super chat and says, Boxy, what about upgradable Xbox?
We spoke about that before, didn't we? If they were going to do it, you would have to split from the APU design to a GPU CPU.
Yeah.
But then you would have the compatibility issue. Then you would have to ensure that a person who has 30 gig of RAM has an update for this, and a person who has 16 gig of RAM, and then this person has an improved GPU, but this person doesn't have.
You're definitely getting a lot closer to the PC. Yeah, it would mean like you would have to provide a lot more settings in the games, which consoles still don't
patches would take a fuckload longer to come out for games.
Definitely. On the other side, it really depends on how upgradable you make the system. Remember the N64? They did it. They had the N64 DD. You know that increased the RAM.
Even the Mega Drive, wasn't it like the 32-bit and the 64-bit or whatever it was? The attachment that they had for it was it that one, or was it a 16-bit to 32-bit?
It was. What was
Which one was it?
I can't remember. I can't remember.
32-bit now or something mad. Someone in chat will know.
Yeah,
but just increased the bits from 16 to 32 or something mad. Via an attachment. Modular.
So it's not like the problem with PC is that you have basically an infinite amount of possible combinations. You can buy that particular RAM with that CPU and that GPU, and you have like 3 different CPUs to choose from, and 3 different GPU manufacturers to choose from, and they have to work all together. Now, if you like they did it with the SSD extension, where you have like a certain card and you just plug it in the back, and suddenly you have doubled your RAM. That would already, yes, it would make things more complicated.
It would make the GPU houses for PC, where you can just plug in a new GPU.
Exactly, and then you have like 2 GPUs. It would make things a lot more complicated, especially when you think about how you have to develop or optimize for consoles. It would make things more complicated.
You know what I think, Boxy, though? The easy jump that we've said so many times, and we've even said today. Just increase the RAM. Increase the RAM, please. Please stop doing 16 gig of RAM. Please.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So I don't think that upgradable consoles are out of the possibility. You will never ever see in a console something like the freedom you have on PC, where you have like infinite amount of combinations of possible parts. But I mean, they do it already with obviously the storage itself. You can swap out the SSD in the PS5. You have 2 different extension cards from Western Digital, and what's the other? Not Western Digital, but
I know the other one.
The other one. Sorry, I'm blanking on the name right now. So that's already kind of an upgradable console. You could also do it a lot more easy with RAM, and maybe if you design for it, that obviously you would have to split the APU.
The problem we've got with the RAM as well, though, is the fact that it is soldered on. It's not like this modular upgradable like you get in computers.
That's how it's done in this day and age, but you can change it. I could see see an easy thing how you could, or relatively easy thing how you could do it. Swapping out CPU, GPU, obviously a lot more difficult, and but in general, I would love the idea to have my console optimized the way I want it. But I don't know how how complicated that would be, like, for the normies, and would it take away too much of the convenience that we have in consoles right now? Because that's, for a lot of people, the main reason to game on consoles is the convenience part. You don't have to care about all of that stuff. It's simply plug and play. You would definitely have to keep that kind of convenience. But yeah, in general, man, I'd love that. I'd love that. But man,
we always get heated about these upgradable things because we just know there's so many better ways of it's not better ways, because I'm not going to discount the ways that these amazing minds behind these architects that create these consoles, but there's more convenient ways of doing things that will be better going forward. And I still to this day, and I'm going to have to ask Jason Ronald one of these, why aren't you guys doing 32 gig of RAM? Why not? Why aren't these CPUs having larger thresholds than what we have right now? Why are we still bottlenecked by the CPU and the RAM?
Yeah,
like, these are two things that can be quite easily changed.
They can.
Like, the GPUs are more than capable in these consoles. Are more than capable.
Yeah.
The GPUs on computers are one of the things that last the longest. It's always the CPU and the RAM that is the issue on PC.
At the very end of the day, I agree.
Yeah.
John TJ follows up with a $5 super chat. Thank you, man. And he says, just partner with AMD and make it plug and play and let us do the RAM. Yeah, exactly. With RAM, it would be very easy to do that. And I don't even know how much you would need to. Well, you would need to optimize a little bit for it in terms of software and games, but most games would automatically take advantage of that. The way how rendering pipelines are now designed, with dynamic culling
on PC, on PC, if you've got 16 gig of RAM, the game just goes, you've got 16 gig of RAM. Like, it's going to run at this level.
Yeah.
As soon as you get in more RAM, it just goes, okay, you've got a lot more headroom. It's going to run at this level now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sweet.
Exactly. So yeah, I do agree. That would be the way to go. So yeah, maybe we will see that in the future. I would definitely love that. And yeah, let's see if Xbox is going to change their approach.
I hope next gen. My big hope for next gen is try and solve the CPU bottleneck issue and increase the RAM. They're my two hopes. That would solve so many issues on console.
Listen, we all know that the next gen consoles are coming probably around 28. So I can't see that they would go with the 16 for the next gen again. It will be 32. The problem is 32 by then will also not be like the super high-end standard. And the idea of Tron TJ to simply make plug and play things like that upgradable, absolutely, yeah. But yeah, Dutch, let us move over to the next topic. Before we go into the community questions, I briefly wanted to talk to you about something super weird. Something I probably I can't remember seeing a scam like that, and that is obviously the day before. I mean, you've seen that. For everyone who hasn't or might not have seen that, is the day before came out. It was advertised for almost 2 years now. They've shown like amazing graphics in the trailers, in the early trailers, you know. Yeah. Then the game came out. It got a 1 from IGN. It got super review bombed. People were furious. They didn't get any refunds. It was impossible to refund the game. In less than a week after the launch of the game, they shut it down. It was supposed to be an ongoing service game, you know, like games as a service title. And they just shut it down. They said, okay, we didn't deliver, but we took your money and screw you. basically. You've seen this, man. I can't remember anything happening like that in gaming in recent years or ever. Honestly, I kind of
Not that
like.
released. We've only seen one that has been an absolute sham that hasn't released, but they've disappeared off the face of the planet. And that was abandoned.
It was abandoned, yeah, but at least nobody got hurt. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They
Yeah.
just, yeah, that game was just whatever it was, fake. But in this case, they released an asset flip. You know, put barely any effort into it. The game was unplayable. It was not. And it wasn't like the typical, yeah, we had launch issues, you know, and a few bugs here and there, and servers were maybe full, or literally people went on the servers, died immediately, weren't able to reboot the game, reload, never got any chance to actually play the game. It's like really like the simplest and minimal amount of work you could put into software. Then release the game, charge full price, block the refunds, and then just shut it down and leave with the money. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, it's just absolutely insane. It's not so much the actual story behind it as their reaction afterwards has been insane. Yeah. One person commented, and this is why everyone's just like blown away by them. One person commented saying, like, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. Like, you've falsely advertised this as an MMO for X amount of years. You've shown us these fantastical trailers that looked graphically superior to most things out there.
Yeah.
This wonderful world that you've created, and it's released, and it's just an asset flip. It's a terrible asset, a dead asset flip. That isn't an MMO. You've then removed everything from there. You should be ashamed of yourself. And they've just went, it's our first time working on a big release. Shit happens.
Yeah. That was literally the tweet.
Yeah. Like, who? I don't care what kind of developer you are. You don't say shit happens when things go to shit. You apologize. You say, I'm sorry this turned out the way it has. This wasn't our intention. Our intention was to release X game. It didn't turn out that way. Time, like, even if they put out a full explanation, time wasn't on our side. After all of this time, we couldn't pull off the final product. We're sorry we misled you. Everyone's getting refunds. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure this out. But the fact that they, after 4 days of not even the full release, it was early access, by the way.
Yeah.
After 4 days of early access of the game, they then closed down their studio, shows that they have absolutely no intent, A, of solving the issue, B, of actually working with the game that they had so much effort putting in, which is debatable now, and also shows that they literally just wanted to make a quick buck. Now, the funny thing is that they clearly don't understand the way Steam works, because Steam will just refund and not pay out.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they thought they were going to be able to pull this off. But according to a few sources, when they've reached out to the CEO is non-contactable, not even by the studio themselves.
Deleted.
So the CEOs went walkies, which means that they're obviously trying to debt dodge the creditors that have funded the game for them.
Yeah.
So it's even worse. They're obviously debt dodging. They've changed the name of the studio to the Crazy 8 from Fantastic. Like, it's just debt dodging. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's insane in this day and age that studios are going to try and pull that stunt. It's insane, especially when you've got been funded. And I think some of these guys that are funding developers now are going to look at this and say, we're going to have to be unbelievably careful with who we give or lend money to, because they're going to have some form of pedigree, or they've been developing and released games as an individual indie studio, self-funded for an X amount of time, and they've done really well. Like, their littler titles have done really well. So we'll trust them with a bigger amount to get this game developed. That's the kind of track record you need. But this developer didn't have a track record of games that released well. They had a track record of these tiny false games that didn't do well. So the onus is both on the developer for intentionally misleading people and the creditor for being naive. It's just a madhouse. It's absolutely mad, but that's what Steam does. And the fact that these guys said it was going to release for PlayStation and Xbox is just bonkers. That wouldn't even get on the store. It wouldn't get past certification.
Yeah. It's so true.
Not for Xbox anyway. PlayStation it probably will, because Life of Black Tiger managed to get on there.
For some reason. No, usually on both systems it wouldn't be able to launch.
Yeah.
And listen, the one thing is, okay, not delivering the game you have promised. You could argue that quite a few games have come out and not delivered what they originally promised. The question really is how you handle it afterwards. And you said everything there is to say, right? Give the refunds, apologize, and so on. Nothing of that. And I just feel bad for two reasons. First of all, the players that actually bought the game and lost their money. Sorry for those. But I also feel bad for other smaller indie developers that try to go out there and get the funding and trying to promise and deliver something to fans. A lot of them go ask and to be backed by the community. And if things like that happen, it makes people lose trust in any developer. That's just a problem, of course. Yeah. It's the next guy that is showing off on Kickstarter a good-looking game, really telling the truth, or is this another scam? Is something like you hurt the entire industry by doing things like that, and that's the real shame, in my opinion, that something like this actually happened. But yeah. No pity with those developers. They put out a tweet like, oh, now we have to shut down the studio and we put all our hearts and souls for so long into this game. And then if you would have done that, you wouldn't behave like that. That's just... But yeah, Dutch...
One thing I want to add to that as well is I'm glad that this developer didn't manage to win an Epic Mega Grant.
Oh yeah,
because if they imagine if they'd pissed off Epic, they'd have some serious issues.
Oh yeah.
But Epic still used the days before in their RTX, and so did Nvidia.
Yeah.
In their RTX demos to show off ray tracing and to show off the game. So I don't know what version that they sent or what they sent.
Probably just a trailer.
To Nvidia to show this.
Definitely no running code. Definitely no running code.
Nope. I don't know what they did to do that in order to convince them to showcase that on their stages.
Yeah.
Because what they released had nothing from there in there. Nothing. It was so different.
So true. But yeah, Dutch, real quick, some Starfield news. They came out and talked about their plans for